On today's World Insight, global efforts to stop the Omicron variant from spreading as the WHO looks to step up cooperation on pandemics. A Chinese research pioneer talks about ways to stop new variants on their tracks with better vaccines and governance.
As the scientific field are moving forward, we're seeing a lot of overlaps. We're merging actually between the Western and the Chinese medicine paradigm.
And traditional Chinese medicine, a viable alternative to combating COVID? A pharmaceutical studies professor tells us why TCM works.
Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. The World Health Organization held talks on a new global treaty covering the pandemic in its special session of its governing body, the World Health Assembly. Representatives of the WHO's 194 members met virtually for 3 days. As of this month, more than 7 billion vaccine doses have been administered worldwide, preventing countless deaths and helping to turn the tide against the pandemic in many countries. But mass vaccination efforts are overshadowed now with the failure to ensure people in developing countries and the least developed economies also benefit from it. With the surge of the Omicron variant, what it will take to keep the next COVID wave at bay? The answer includes more inclusive governance, better global cooperation for sure, and more effective treatment and vaccines. On this and more, take a listen to Ding Sheng, the director of the Global Health Drug Discovery Institute. He's a pioneer in researching stem cells using traditional Chinese medicine along with Western know-how. Take a listen. Dr. Ding, good to see you again.
Likewise, it's my pleasure.
With your background, why are you so fascinated by what's going on in the traditional Chinese medicine?
Yeah, that's a really good question. As you know, I have been really trained in modern biomedical research for the last 30 years. I think one key fascination to me is really the Western medicine and the traditional Chinese medicine are actually quite different, are really two parallel scientific paradigms.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, in the Western medicine paradigm, we would often consider a specific disease is really caused by a particular change of a biomolecule. So we would discover and develop a drug that can interact with this specific biomolecule to really correct its function and consequently to cure the disease. Mm-hmm. So in some way, it's really what we call a reductionist approach. But in the traditional Chinese medicine, the paradigm or the view is actually quite different. The disease would be viewed as a different state from normal, and this particular state is really a result of a cascade of network of interactions of different components. Could be different mechanisms, different biomolecules from different tissue organs. Ultimately, through that network interaction, ultimately results in this specific state, that what we call disease. Mm-hmm. And also modify that disease state, perhaps by actually modulating different part of this network to really rebalance that state back to normal state. So that's sort of this more holistic system-based approach to disease.
Which is more precise? Which is better?
As the scientific field are moving forward, we're seeing a lot of overlaps. We're merging actually between the Western and the Chinese medicine paradigm.
Give me some examples.
As I mentioned early on, in the traditional Chinese medicine practice, you may treat, for example, a heart disease by actually using medicine that actually modulate a different tissue organ. Mm-hmm. And now actually we're seeing more examples actually also in the Western medicine practice. For example, in the current cancer treatment, a mainstream, a very effective treatment would be modulating our own immune system to treat the cancer. Another example would be people are studying treating the gut for actually by developing drug that actually modify the gut microbiota, the gut microbiome to treat neurological disease. I mean, those ideas or those approaches would be very unpopular, controversial, many years ago, but now actually it's becoming mainstream Western medicine. So those are the emerging sort of similarities.
Yeah.
But also, I would say in recent years, the biomedical research also converge on looking at so-called systems biology.
What does that mean?
A pioneer leader in this field, Lee Hood, actually talk about how actually looking at networks of biomolecule interaction would define a precise disease mechanism. He would also, present how actually disease can be managed in a sort of a pre-disease, preventive manner. So those concepts actually exist, hundreds or even 1,000 years ago in the traditional Chinese medicine, which is also about actually treating the pre-disease, the unhealthy state, how actually that can be modified or modulated to maintain the health state.
From now until we build that bridge in a way between the traditional Chinese medicine and the Western medicine, what is to you, as a scientist, what's the best approach that we understand the traditional Chinese medicine?
I think in the past couple decades, there had been a lot of research activities in terms of actually employing the Western medicine scientific approaches to sort of better understand and develop, Chinese medicine. In other words, that's about, purify individual components and substance compound from those different herb extracts and find out the target of those individual small molecule and also investigate how those individual specific small molecule through modifying that target mechanism to modify the disease. So really there in the past many years there's that paradigm what we also know this famous anti-malaria drug was actually a derivative of the Chinese medicine practice, but essentially it's a Western medicine approach. It's really an individual specific compound for treating as an anti-malaria drug. So there was that, really taking the Western medicine approaches to further dissect, traditional Chinese medicine mechanism. Now actually, as also the biomedical research further advanced into understanding system-based biology, the network interactions, and also given now actually new technology development, now we can look at tissue and organ at a single cell basis to look at actually how they are modulated by different signals. And now there's also emerging bioinformatics, big data approaches using ever improving computational power. I think we're now really at I would say the new beginning to use all of those new technologies, new scientific understanding to further advance actually traditional Chinese medicine under that holistic system-based view of Chinese medicine.
I like everything you said, and especially the new momentum being built as a result of new technologies, big data. Can you maybe give us some examples as to how big data now have served in a way, as that bridge, building up that bridge?
For example, in the traditional practice of disease diagnosis, a Chinese doctor would actually practice with the patient by looking at different aspects of this individual, and now actually that different measurements actually can be digitalized. For example, and those digitalized images perhaps can be tagged and also assembled into the big data, and then sort of subsequently using perhaps artificial intelligence type of approaches to better quantify actually those different process. So better digitalizing and quantifying actually those traditional Chinese medicine practice actually can really, in my view, can actually remove some of the existing barriers, because right now it's all by different doctors based on their teaching, based on their experiences.
Right.
It's not very quantitative. Could vary actually from individual to individual. But with this type of system, we may have a more uniform, a more quantified actually analysis or measurements, and also ultimately more precise disease diagnosis.
Chinese traditional medicine, you see it is a combination of so many things, right? It is about, of course, medicine itself, but the health, but it's also about literature, it's about philosophy, it's about myth, ancient myth, and it's about geography, a lot of things combined. How confident are you, given the little knowledge that we have today worldwide about traditional Chinese medicine, that you will be able to, with your colleague, really interpret the science behind it?
In many ways, the traditional Chinese medicine really centered on the human being nature interaction. From that, actually, really talented doctor, physician, really extract and then synthesis those different observations into this specific practice. I think again, that's really just one a segment of time of human beings' understanding of nature, understanding of human being and nature interaction, and again we can really use new understanding, new tools and technology to better review the fundamental basis behind that interaction. This will evolve into a higher resolution, better understanding. It's like any scientific field. We continue, human being continue to break that boundary, to review sort of a next frontier, next understanding of that phenomenon.
Professor Ding, fascinating stuff. Thank you so much. I learned a lot.
Well, thank you for having me again.
Thank you. You're watching World Insight. Coming up, traditional Chinese medicine, a variable alternative to combating COVID? A pharmaceutical studies professor tells us why TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, works. After this break. Welcome back. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. As the Omicron variant circles the globe, people look to better COVID treatment and vaccinations, but research into these may take a long time. Pharmaceutical studies professors in China think Chinese medicine may provide some alternative. So in what ways can traditional Chinese medicine help combat COVID and its variants? Meet Professor Huang Hubert Yin, who is the Deputy Dean of Tsinghua University School of Pharmaceutical Sciences.
Hundreds of Chinese medicine have been used. These are all different samples from different production sites across the country.
I see.
This actually is really interesting. So this one is called skull cap or huangqi. It has been really widely used. And these are from different sites with different years.
So this is year 1?
That's year 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Oh.
You can see they look all differently. For example, this is like year 2 scale cap. Look at that, the shape looks very different. If you look inside, this core actually pretty interesting. It was not dried up. Like, whereas for this one, year 4 is completely dried up. This one is called 子芹 in Chinese term. This one is called 苦芹.
That would assume it's a very difficult process, isn't it? Because there are a lot of variations about where the location is, the years, and also the amount and everything.
Indeed. That's the reason we have been working with leading industry partners in the countries to collect those samples and trying to put a large database collecting data with our state-of-art analysis technology. You can see, like with this information we collect, they actually fall in different clusters. So this really match to different dried up roots of scale caps. This information would help us to come up with a new standard that can be used internationally to come up with the next generation of new traditional medicines. We have been working with other researchers to team up with them to really connect the sporadic informations, and this would be really helpful to actually provide a systemic system to actually provide a high quality control for such traditional.
So what's your
medicine.
sense? This is just starting?
This is starting of a huge amount of work. I think it's going to take generations of researchers to complete this mission.
Thank you so much for showing me around, particularly about the Chinese medicine materials that you're researching on. Fascinating stuff.
Thank you.
Many have been curious about why is China trying to promote Chinese traditional medicine during the fight against the pandemic, COVID-19. What is your take?
In my opinion, traditional Chinese medicine is really a national treasure, inherited generations after generations, over thousands of years, really. It's been said that during this pandemic, especially this COVID-19 pandemic, traditional Chinese medicine has already demonstrated its relevance and contributions.
But you know, when we talk about medicine, there has to be safety, efficacy, right? So how do we know it is effective? What standards do we apply to it?
Historically, in China, traditional Chinese medicine has already helped us numerous times to save lives. For example, in this time, from the very beginning, traditional medicine has been widely used to release the symptoms in early stage to save lives in the late stage. We have actually already have standard therapies to actually distribute to different mobile hospitals and other medical institutions. It has been already shown over 90% of the patients receive substantial release by receiving the traditional Chinese medicine.
Now, have those traditional Chinese medicine become a set model in a way for prevention and control of COVID-19 since then in China?
At the early days of the pandemics, we really don't have any effective method to treat those patients.
No effective measures, no medicine, there's no vaccine either.
Almost not at all. From the very beginning, TCM has been used widely. In some provinces, they actually in early days, they actually release standardized recipes. And in the early days, there's 3 widely used recipes have been recommended by the Chinese medicine authorities.
It seems that the overall Western medicine system, which all of us accept at this point, is very different in a way that is very much a system of its own. But if you look at the Chinese traditional Chinese medicine system, there seems to be a lot of things involved. There could be the scientific part, which you're researching about. There's also the philosophical part. There's also the mystery part. There's also the cultural part of it. There seems to be a lot of elements put into the same word. What does that mean for your research? You have to peel one layer after another in order to find the essence that you as a scientist are looking for. What is this peeling off process like for you?
A lot of this traditional Chinese medicine, along with the medical practice, really the fruits from generations of pragmatic approach, right? From really like thousands of like physicians' practice, they actually come down to these very valuable treasures, what we call traditional Chinese medicines. Back then, really like thousands of years ago, we don't have the current technologies we have, but now we have much more powerful tools to understand their mechanism, how they works. Take artificial intelligence, for example. This is a really hot topic. In biomedical research, we really depend heavily on computer information technologies. As we said, traditional Chinese medicine really like take the patients as a whole. We do think this is a balance, like or the information exchange between the patients and the environment, or maybe the nature. So we call this is really like the harmony between the sky and the ground, or like the human and the environment. So, but we don't really understand how each of the details works. Yeah. With the artificial intelligence, neural network, machine learning, name it, all of these current technologies, we can actually like appreciate this whole picture much better with much more in-depth understanding.
But on the other hand, have we already assumed a hypothetical conclusion, it seems, when it comes to traditional Chinese medicine, that whether it is really effective in a scientific way, how can we explain the earlier experiences? You know, how is experiences related to science and eventually related to a real analysis, nail it down? This to me is a fascinating process.
So
are we succeeding in anything in that regard?
As many people think, traditional Chinese medicine is effective. But the question is, how do we show it? In the current Western biomedical science, we tend to use big data, right? We use double-blind clinical trials to demonstrate that. It seems we're also coming to the stage for traditional Chinese medicines. We not only have to tell people that this is effective, it's good stuff, but also using the current mathematical approach, there is statistic significance. With the double-blind clinical trials, we actually can show people the data. And we actually, like, I think we're able to do that during a pandemic such as the COVID-19. In the early days, there's no way to develop vaccines or medicines in really short time.
Right.
However, a lot of traditional Chinese medicine has already been shown by the from the what we learned from the history, those are effective. So those informations can certainly help us to narrow down the candidate to actually like a kick in, really just right in, just almost right away to help us to release the pain from a really severe pandemic such as COVID-19.
If you look at the overall Chinese traditional medicine system, there are enormous amount of types of different herbs that we're talking about, and their function, their years, their format, their doses, all of these are mysteries. So I'm thinking, when is it possible to be able to translate one system to another system, like the one system that used in traditional Chinese medicine over thousands of years, and the system that we are commonly using today, the Western medicine system? When are we going to have that jump? You know, of course, you don't know the answer, but to me, that is an important question. And before that happens, what should be our approach to both systems?
In some of these traditional classics, the classic for traditional Chinese medicines, close to 2,000 different Chinese herbs have been recorded, such as the it's going to be a lot of works, and but the great thing is this is going to be international collaborative efforts. There's increasing interest at the international level to appreciate those traditional Chinese medicines. During the COVID-19 pandemic, at Tsinghua, we actually tried to publicize traditional Chinese medicine we use here in China to those African countries. Think about those. Those vaccines developed by international pharmaceutical companies, they're going to cost tons of money. In Africa, they won't be able to be like used right away. By contrast, traditional Chinese medicines cost, let's say, by average $10 for one dose. And it's readily available for those African countries. These medicines have been really helpful to help them in this campaign.
Now, Tsinghua is one of those cases, right? I mean, your institution is one of those examples in China about how the basic research has been developing regarding traditional Chinese medicine. What is your goal, eventually, when you try to link the two systems together, Professor?
At Tsinghua, I feel that it's our responsibility to shoulder this mission to inherit, modernize, and innovate traditional medicines. We try to really dissect these mechanisms, trying to understand how traditional medicine works for things that it's really good at, such as disease prevention, such as the synergistic effect in disease treatment or rehabilitation efforts. And those actually have been shown to be particularly good to use traditional Chinese medicines. And I do believe that our efforts are going to help to improve in this area.
You're a Western-trained scientist. Now you put a lot of your efforts and energy into this. What is your understanding about what you are trying to achieve?
I feel that this is the mission for our generations of scientists to use the tools we learned from other disciplines to apply this to Chinese medicine. Really like to push the limit of these wonderful technologies, or like the resource, or maybe like to utilize this resource to help like a larger population.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. That's right.
Thank you, Professor. Will traditional Chinese medicine work in our fight against COVID? Well, some answers, at least in the earlier interview. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.